turn on the base map imagery. Let's create a bridge for 2D as well. So now remember, in case if you have to create any hydraulic structures other than bridges, let's say you have to create weirs or even you want to create culvert, make use of this SA2D connection. For your 1D model, you have different structures defined. If you have to place your structures laterally, you will create a lateral structure. If you have to place a structure across the river, you will create inline structure. For 2D model, this SA2D connection is what you will use to create a weir in your model. For example, let's say I have to create a dam here. Click on draw. Of course. I'll come to that part. Hang on. So let's say if I have to create a dam structure here, I'll just go ahead for 2D model. Let's say this is what you need to do. Very simple. Yeah, in fact. Give it a name, call it dam, and once that is done, you can choose where you want to extract that information, the geometry for your dam. You can define your uh, width here. Let's say 50 feet is fine. Click on apply. Now you have the structure. You can type in your details if you know the structure. There you go. It shows you what the topography is like. You can create all sorts of weirs here. You can choose this draw, go to overflow and click on draw and you can draw your weir. You want to include culverts or gates in those weir, you can do that. If you want to breach the dam structure you have created, you can choose this dam breach, check this box and define your breach specification and you can breach the structure. Now for 2D model bridges, you just have to follow one simple step. Very easy to create. If I go to this 2D bridge and culvert data, click on new. Again, I'll simply draw my center line of the bridge here, and it extracts the data from my underlying sources. There you go. Again, I'll go to my geometry adjustment. I'll shift my stationing for both upstream and downstream to the same horizontal station. This time I'll choose centered between the banks. Let's define a reference station of 1500, hit apply. Now you can see our upstream and downstream are centered on the same horizontal station of 1500. Now, rest all the steps remain the same. So like you saw for your 1D model as well, there you go. Now you'll go to your build bridge opening and just follow those same steps. 742, reference station of 1500, bridge width of 100 feet. Let's say we have some piers, 2.5 feet diameter, 30 feet, center to center spacing, and click on build. So you have it defined now. Now let's say instead of defining this like here, I don't want my piers. I'm just giving you an idea if in case you have to define it. Let's remove the piers, copy that to downstream, remove everything here. Now you do not have the piers. Now if you want a different shape for your low chord, go to deck roadway, draw your low chord. Let's say I want to start from here. And let's say this is what my low chord looks like here. And you can remove these points here. So you can give it any shape if you want. And copy that to downstream. Then you have your shape for any shape that you want to create, you can define it. You say, I don't want any of these, I just want a sloping deck. So there you go. Copy that to downstream. So play with this and you can create it the same way. All right. Anything else? So that's how you can create your bridge structures and everything in here in the model. So there you have your 2D bridge created without any piers. And if you want to include piers, well, yet again, just define that. Hang on. Define your bridge piers if you want to define your bridges. That is what you can do. This doesn't look like a great shape. So let's say instead of defining it like this, I'll try to match it with my high chord. And let's say this is the shape. Okay, so that was about it. Steps remain the same. Now, coming to the part where you want to define 1D, 2D coupled model, avoid this in case if you can. Let's say, for example, it's not necessary unless it's absolutely required. Do not create. Most of the cases where you create your hybrid model, it can easily be solved using 2D, simplified 2D models. But in case if you have to absolutely create it, so for example, let's say this area, I want to mark this as my 2D area for the overbanks. So again, if you want to place your 2D area laterally, you have to draw a lateral structure first. So let's go ahead and draw it. I'll start from here. Let's say the overbanks area here is my 2D area. It will automatically trim these cross sections. And right now, instead of here, I'll choose out of the system because I did not have my 2D area defined. The moment I click on apply, you can choose how to extract this information. Apply. My lateral structures are created. Now I can go ahead and create my 2D area. I'll go to my 2D flow area drop down, choose draw 2D flow area command. Click on draw. Let's draw a curvilinear area here. I'll turn on the snap so that I can draw the boundary along my lateral structure. So center line of the last lateral structure. This is where my 2D area would lie. So this area on the right overbank is where I have to define my 2D model. Roughly, I'm just drawing it like this here. I click choose start. You can give it a name called 2D area. Hit apply. Let's close this now. Double click, generate your mesh. Hit update. And there you have your 2D area defined. Let's go ahead and click on close. You can include your break lines if you want, and then define your boundary conditions. So in case if your flow is also available from your input of the flow is available in your 2D area, you can define your 2D area boundary conditions by defining your boundary condition line. Or if everything's coming through your 1D model itself, you can define the boundary condition for your 1D model itself. That's it. Here, click on define. Let's paste it. So that's how easily you can create your hybrid models as well. You can define towards slope. Click on measure. Hang on. In this case, we don't need that. I'll just use this first value as the initial condition of the flow. That's it. Our model is done. Even for your 2D model, you can have it defined like this. This is a 2D model area, and this is your 1D model connected through the lateral structure. Now what you will do, go to your lateral structure, double click, and the connection, instead of out of the system, you will choose adjacent SA2D flow area, and you choose your 2D area. So now it knows that your water flows from your river to the 2D area. Okay. All right. So with that, I'm going to conclude this session today. Now coming to the part, okay, we have selecting the mesh spacing here. Now this depends on a lot of factor, okay? Now what happens is, let's say, for example, if I turn on my DEM color relief, these are some usual common scenarios which you can use. Now, if you are dealing with an area that is considerably flat out, the terrain doesn't vary much in larger area, in that case, you have the liberty to use larger cell size. So, say if you want to capture everything in detail here, your cell covers this portion, this cell covers this portion, but I want everything in detail, and there are a lot of changes happening in the topography. In that case, start with smaller cell size. So I usually, whenever I've done the model for most of our clients, the case where you use the metric unit, again, you have to be careful because your metric unit would have your area, larger area covered. Start with, let's say, 30-meter cell size for your 2D models. And if the need be, start reducing it. So smaller cell size will give you much accurate result, but avoid using too small a cell size, okay? If you're dealing with area that is too flat, not much changes are happening in the topography, simply use adaptive mesh or use a larger cell size there. If there are a lot of changes happening in the model, or if you're doing dam break simulations, or you have a lot of hydraulic structures in the model, in that case, use smaller cell size. Okay. Again, as you create your 2D models, there might be issues with the stability of the model, or you might have issues with, let's say, the results in that case. Pick a higher cell size to start with, and then start reducing the cell size, run the simulation, and see the impact. So in your case, if you're dealing with large area, start with a cell size. I would recommend around 30, 20 meters, and see if the area covered within the cell is too big or too small, accordingly adjust it. But large area, start with fairly large cell size. If you have smaller area that you want to model and there are a lot of changes happening in the topography, I'd recommend use smaller cell size. Start with, let's say, 15 meter. And break line cells should always be smaller compared to your 2D cells. What I mean here, let me show you. Let's switch to 2D model. So whatever cell size, if I'm using a uniform meshing scheme here, if I'm using this uniform meshing scheme, and if I use 100 feet cell size here, I'd need to ensure that this break line cell is smaller than the normal cells you have in the model. So if I use a cell size of 30 feet, and this should always be rather placed blank. The relaxed spacing which you see here, if you do not want to change anything, just keep it blank. Do not include zero in here, okay? Remember the rule. Whenever you have break lines defined, your break line cells should always be smaller than your normal body cells in here, normal 2D flood area cells. And of course, when you're using the relaxed spacing, these cells should always be larger than the break line cell. Now, what happens here? Let me just go back. This is too small a cell size. I don't need that much. 100 feet is fine. I'll show you what happens here. So you can see my 2D area cells 100 feet by 100 feet. This is what the normal cells in the model look like. And the break line cells, these are the smaller ones you see. These are 20 feet by 20 feet. So these cells adjacent to your break lines are your break line cells. And when you start moving away from break line, the cell spacing will start increasing. So relaxed spacing will tell you what happens with the next set of cells, what cell size to use. So you can have anything higher than 20 and less than this one you can place, but rather keep this blank instead of defining anything if you do not want to. Also, you have this, so let's say you are dealing with a river that is kind of narrow, but one set of cell on each side doesn't cover it. So what you can do, this is our BL06, right? So I'll show you here. I'll just simply go ahead and repeat one more set of cells. Hit update. Right now you can see these break line cells, one cell this side, one cell this side. These are smaller ones. If I click on update, you will have one more layer of same cells added to that. There you go. Now you have two layers of breakline cells. So if you want to define a wide river and you do not want to use a lot of break lines in the model, you can also make use of the speed cells option, okay? All right, now when, of course, start working on your model, create your model. If you face any issues, you can reach out to us. And of course, I'm going to provide you with my email ID as well, but instead of, see, if I might not be available, so I work around 12, I come during the night hours here, so I cater to European and African and Asian clients. So in case if I'm not available and you still need assistance, make use of this email ID, okay? Support@civilgeo.com. Hang on.